howdy, good evening. I think we'll do a rough draft of an intended video in the beginning of Genesis. We're going to look at the first line of the book of Genesis in the Bible with the intention not only of a commentary but also an introduction to interrogative analysis. And as always, down in the comments, if this content is completely worthless and you wasted a few minutes, please tell me that, because I do have other things to do. But I suspect that a little allocation of time, life, and whatever magic resource we allocate to our works is needful here too. Maybe on a daily basis, or weekly, or so on. So it says in the King James Version, I think, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I think it's something like that. Maybe in Latin it's in principio creavit Deus caelum et terram. I think it's like that. So what should we notice here? Note that, here's a question actually. Where does this creation or making take place? Does it take place in the universe, or in the sky, or in the world? So the question where, yeah, I don't have an exact answer to that, but what I want to look at or shine a light towards is the fact that two big important settings are created. Just as a review, what is a setting? Not necessarily, the lightness or the darkness on the iPhone, but where a story takes place. A novel might take place in England, and also at a time in the 16th or 17th century, for example. Just as Robinson Crusoe took place mostly on an island. He was born in the year 1609 and sailed away from England. So, why is that important, or why should we notice? Why is it relevant that this God, or which one, dare we say, in the mode of polytheism, that the concept God is has the number is plural. Monotheism, in contrast, proposes that the concept God by nature is singular, and contrasts that with tree. The concept tree by nature, I guess, plural, to the extent that you trust what you see. Why not? Yeah. But is not what we see a product also of how we see, not simply what's there? Well, there refers to which place, or among places. It doesn't, so it refers to one universal cosmos. What I propose, though, is that the idea of one concept of the interrogative category where, such as world or universe, that this is mainly a modern idea. Modern, not in the sense of contemporary or today, but in contrast to ancient. The idea that Western civilization may not be a continuum, may not be an unbroken continuum, say from the pre-Socratic philosophers to Descartes, or from perhaps Homer, or the Bronze Age to even today. I usually follow the, not sure what noun to use, but the theory, I suppose, of Oswald Spengler, the German historian and philosopher, that the Apollinian culture is actually radically distinct from the Faustian, the latter predicated upon infinite base, that's a total container of everything, not necessarily itself material, versus versus the ancient culture predicated upon distinct shapes, circles, squares, triangles, each a species of its kind. Like this tree produces seed after its kind, or that other tree, fruit after its kind, and like breeds like, and so on. But we'll get back to that first line in the Bible and how it's relevant to this kind of interrogative analysis. Howsoever much interrogative analysis itself be useful, relevant, I don't know, maybe conduce you towards better future actions to your success and empowerment. Take an intermission here. Actually, a car going by. I'll speak in a second. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, or maybe the heaven and the earth. Caelum et terram in the Latin. They're in the accusative, actually. You should notice that what for the modern mind is the first thing and most important. Universe, Why does the universe exist? You'll see a TED Talk by the physicist Jim Holt, who, assumes it's self-evident that this concept of universe actually is, that it does exist. That the question whether universe exists is answered. And isn't that silly to question? Well, I don't question that this tree, if you could say this tree exists, or that rock, or these leaves. I don't question whether these exist. Whatever it means to exist, of course, it's an open question: existence, being, and so on. But asserting that universe, or the universe, exists assumes that thinking has to be rooted in a peculiar singular concept that by nature is singular, just as for the monotheists, the gods, or the concept God, was, is, maybe will be, that concept as well. But as we know, God does not necessarily have to be the dominant singular concept in your vocabulary, any thinker's vocabulary, where the thinker is naive or reflective. Who's naive? I don't know, maybe a medical doctor who says, this is science. So, oh, cool, you can say, well, it's not science, it's the opinion of scientists. Their opinions, shouldn't disagree with. But he's also fetishing a singular concept. So even if this medical doctor is an atheist, whether implicitly or directly, what you'll see is that human, for lack of a better adjective, human thinking, for the most part, devolves into a suspicious fetishing of singular concepts that evince a recrudescence of monotheism, to the extent that's a disadvantage. Disagree. So in the beginning, God, whoever that is, which one? God, created the heavens, or just the heaven. Not sure if we should say heavens in the plural. Firmament, I think, also singular. Yeah. The waters, and Maria, which means the seas, plural. So, anyway, let's get back to the sentence. In the beginning, when, I don't know, in the beginning, so God created the heaven and the earth. Now, who created? Wait a second. Who created the heaven and the earth? God, obviously. If we trust the story at the beginning, maybe Jim Holt could talk to us about the Big Bang, but we'll focus on the literature for now. So, yeah, in this case, maybe in general, the concept God, a God, the God, or just God, even is what is its interrogative category? I would say who. You could say that, well, God as a maker is an efficient cause of the being, or coming into being, of the heaven and the earth. In this case, why do the heavens and the earth exist? Because God created them. But to answer why they exist, you kind of need the maker and his action and his making as well. Maybe they shouldn't be decoupled. Maybe the making is just so amazing and important that, you know, the lowly human mind imagines a maker behind that divine action, as though it can only conceive of a table maker making tables. But I'll leave that. Yeah, so God, I think, let's just suppose, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, fits into the interrogative category, who? And just to practice a bit more with these interrogative categories and how you can categorize concepts at a higher order, how would you categorize the concept decision? Should we do it or should we not? Well, whether we're going to do this thing, whether we're going to get married, is in question. So I'm pretty sure that the concept decision fits into whether, but it could be which as well. If you're examining several alternatives, which fruit would you like to eat when you break your fast? Mango, papaya, guanabana, and maybe others. Yeah, so this is just practice. A strategy might be similar, or familiar to software developers. Strategy, I would say, how things are done. Well, how are we going to take that hill? We need a strategy. Or maybe how are we going to grow our business? Business is action, right? Busyness, yeah. Yeah, so how, and there are other examples of this, like a mode. A mode could also be a how things are done. So these are interrogative categories. Now, the interrogative category of a concept is one aspect of it, besides its definition, which you could find in a dictionary. The definition, and also to notice is the number or the numerical type of the concept, with the gods being plural, but monotheism introduced in the singular, and probably Genesis of the Bible, first book, is a monotheistic text. And but you see, the maker is singular. Interrogatively, this means that the category who, by being or having a singular concept, an important or valuable singular concept, is more important than the category where, which again is consistent with the Bible not deferring, not immediately worshiping the cosmos or the universe, you know. Why does the universe exist? But the complicated concept, if you think about it, because universe, etymologically, is it not a past participle of an unknown verb, univert, to make many one, to contain all things. Right. So that's most of what I had to say. I'm gonna pause for a moment or two, just collect my thoughts.
I think he's actually trying, but...
Yeah, but he just spent 2 weeks on Nantucket basically watching the dog.
Yeah, so I would say for the writers of the Bible or of Genesis, whoever is the author, maybe capital A, the allocation of value, an interrogative category, is valuable or more valuable than another if it contains a prime singular concept. I think that makes any sense. So for the author or writer of Genesis and the Bible, I would say that the category who, especially as maker, is much more important than where. Maybe more important than what. However, what the concept or a category comes into play later on with the creation of different species after or before, I think, regions like sky or earth and seas are created. So the thinking is not predicated on the absolute importance of where or wheredom, to coin a word to confuse you maybe further. So it's not, it's a different interrogative constitution than I think that of the ancient Greeks, or even the modern mind. So to respect the importance of this category where, speaking English now though, there cannot be a singular locational concept like space in the modern tongue. So you can't just actually coin an absolute space. This actually takes us to a stricter interpretation of monotheism. In Exodus, which is the book that comes after Genesis, all about the creation, but Exodus is the book of laws and commandments, especially so, not pure action, just creating, but rather guiding or regulating the action. That's its significance in the order of the books. But this stricter interpretation of monotheism, what would it entail? Beyond the commandment, thou shalt not have other gods before me, or maybe thou shalt not fashion graven images. You shouldn't make these things. You shouldn't have other gods, idols, for example. I don't know, like Mercury or Jupiter, Saturn, Venus as Roman gods. You should not have other gods at all or before me, however it goes. And yeah, it's not so strict as no god but God. A rough translation, I think, of what Muhammad said. Maybe Islam more strictly monotheistic, but what I'm suggesting, if I were a theologian, or what I'd recommend, excuse me, is to say not only no God, but God, whoever he is, but that's part of the fun, because the who, it reminds of these interrogative categories that we play with, we put together, we assign different values to each, we observe the cultural or scientific outcomes. So the greater strictness would be that you may not have any other singular concept besides the gods or the concept God. And I think that's the stricter monotheism. So it's not just one God, but only one concept can be singular, which means that speaking, especially in awe of time and space and all that, becomes blasphemy. And interrogatively, what does this mean? So at a higher order, it means that, I think who is the only category that may contain a singular concept, which is the concept God. If you would allow that the concept God fall into or fall under an even higher level abstract category, which is who, but who created the heavens and the earth? It was not completely absurd and anthropomorphic question, right? So what this implies, anyway, is that the concepts or the categories when and where may not lend themselves to alternative post-monotheistic singular concepts. You could just make a rule like that. Those are the more obvious ones, aren't they? I'll take this moment to comment on the mode of writing. And speaking of very successful investor, author of Principles, Ray Dalio, he sometimes lets himself go and, dare I say, worship evolution. That's his kind of go-to singular concept, as though buried deep in the psyche or some desire to re-believe, to believe in God. So we pick another singular concept that may or may not be to our advantage. But it's interesting because he refers to evolution as some overall acting or action. Well, interrogatively, what is action? It's, it's actually what happens. So the interrogative categories are all just aspects or different faces of action. I'm walking on a street through the forest. So who's walking? I am. Where am I walking? On the street. And when am I walking? I guess right now, today. It's obvious. Doesn't need to be said. So that's a brief discussion of that first sentence in Genesis and why the author, let's say it singularly now, why the author of the Bible chose to have two distinct regions created in the beginning.